Is that 5e or?
Oh, it's Dark Heresy, but yeah. So we've been doing it now for like.
I'll be right back.
Oh yeah, a while.
This conversation started for you, but he does not want to hear your answer.
Nope, he doesn't want to hear the rest of it. He was done when I told him Dark Heresy.
Dark Heresy? Fuck that, I'm out.
Fuck that, I'm done with this.
I thought he was playing a real game. Only nerds play 40k stuff.
I don't know. At work, they always just tell me to ask good questions. They don't say to stick around for the answer. I don't think that.
Listening's not super important. It's just that you really incite people to talk.
Yeah.
No, Lisa was asking me for a key, and I'm like, ah, shit, I don't know where that is. Let me find it. So I
don't use
priorities. But no, Dark Heresy is really fun. I was super excited for the campaign that was going to be Michael Timpe, Tyler, and me, and then the Falcon, and was it you, Danny, that was in there too, right? We were all going to do it? Yeah.
I was in that campaign.
Yeah, we played one thing, and it was amazing, and then Michael's like, oh, right, I have a business I'm launching. I probably shouldn't do this right now.
I probably don't have time to do this right now. Yeah.
All right, guys. While people are connecting, I do not want to... A bunch of our games, for all four of us, are not competitive. So I do not want to go into incredibly detailed... and I've had feedback on this. We should not go turn by turn in games that are not competitive. People want to hear why it wasn't competitive, whether it's a list reason or a matchup reason or a strategic reason. So what I'm going to do, and you guys can do this a little differently if you want, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to spend time talking about how my list was created, because that's where all the actual effort was for me. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my games. Danny, I think we'll talk about our game in quite a bit of detail, because I think it's the only interesting game I had, frankly.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. The picture of us at the table before the game, it slays me, by the way. We look very civilized.
We are having a discussion.
And then, Danny, I'm going to kill all your things. Oh, well, I'm going to kill all of your things. Okay, how similar. I have purposely prepared no other content, because I know that when we try to, the four of us all talk about our lists and our games, it's going to go for 2 hours. It just is. So,
yep,
that's what's going on. But I would just remind you guys not to get lost in the turn-by-turn nuance of a game that doesn't matter, because we do that and we always get feedback about it. Like, after Mitch's tournament at Boise Cup, a few people were like, I don't need more detail in Mitch tabling people. I'm like, fair enough. So.
Okay, yeah, that's legit.
He tabled them so hard.
Yeah.
And it was with AdMech, so obviously it was really complex and nuanced.
I actually went back and listened to some of it, Mitch, to try to figure out, like, I went back and, like, scrubbed through it to try to listen to some of it to see if I could see if there was real feedback. And it is hilarious, because you do say at every game, and then I thought they had me, but then I tabled them. And you say that like 4 times.
Yep. But that comes from not having played 40K in a while, and like we've talked about this before. Like, Nick's default when he goes into a game is, I'm going to win this. My default is, I can lose any game if I'm not watchful and prepared enough. So the narrative that goes on for me is always starting with, well, how am I going to lose, and then how do I find victory through that? Like, what is their strategy to beat me, and then how do I make that not happen?
Right. Okay, I think we're good. There's no audio issues that I've detected.
Excellent.
I don't trust it. It was way too easy to start this stream.
It's too quiet. It's calm. Too calm.
Yep.
Gus is here. I don't know. Well, it's too perfect.
That's why it's good. Gus brought us all together. It's really great.
Gus is a real uniter. That's what he's known as.
Yeah.
It's true. He likes to unite with everybody one at a time.
Yep.
One of those individualist uniters. Okay.
Are we ready?
Yeah, beer is open, so don't have to have that on the podcast.
Well, 10 a.m. beer. That sounds nice.
On Sundays, absolutely.
Okay. I used to drink whiskey when I watched football, and then I discovered that meant that all that happened on Sunday was watching football and nothing else. And sometimes that's okay, and sometimes it's not. But when the game's over at like 4, or when it's a morning game, and I'm like trashed on the couch wanting to go to sleep, and Stephanie's like, "We should go do things." It's like, oh yeah, no, I wasn't planning on that. I love that football as a sport has all of the worst foods for you and alcohol all like attached to it. The idea that you would spend just like, I'm gonna eat all the fried foods, and I'm gonna eat all this stuff, and I'm gonna eat all these nachos,
all the dips and all the
yeah. It's just,
Like-
and I'm gonna drink a lot, and then it's gonna be 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then what?
naps. Naps time. Power naps.
The first time we had a football party, Stephanie ate all the carbs and then fell asleep on me, and she's like, "Is this football? I can make a bunch of food for people and then go to sleep?" And I'm like, "Yes, yes, you can."
It's essentially tiny Thanksgiving.
There you go.
Yeah. Wow. Very good analogy.
That is very.
That was deep.
For someone who doesn't watch the sports ball,
It's
it's
like-
tiny Thanksgiving.
Yeah, no, it's funny because both of those things are extremely American, and when you think about it that way, it really works. And I'm gonna ponder on that later.
It's life changing.
Okay, so I do want to test one thing before we go. I'm taking tiny notes that I don't normally take. So if I go over here and I say, how loud is that on the microphone? That was the question.
Didn't hear anything.
Okay.
It was slightly muffled, like desk activity noises,
Okay.
but nothing that I think will be an issue.
All right, I'll just type really, really softly.
Do we need to like cover for you when you reach over like that? We'll just go like, and then.
Man, we are nowhere near coordinated enough for anything you're describing.
Oh, that's true.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't
No, it'll be
notice.
great because we'll do it at the end of the typing, so we'll really highlight the noise difference.
Perfect. You've done it.
All right, are we ready? Welcome to Best in Faction.
No, we're not ready.
Okay.
Yeah, I just swallowed all of those words at once. Give me a second. Okay. Oh, he's taking a note. That's intimidating, by the way.
The funny thing is, Danny could have just stepped in, and I wouldn't have known the difference. I would have been like, "Oh, other Chuck." Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, should we do that?
No.
Are you ready for that, Danny?
Ready for which part?
Have you do the intro as Chuck?
Yeah, you say a competitive podcast about or a Warhammer 40k podcast about competitive 40k or something.
A competitive Warhammer 40k
And
podcast
then-
about competitive Warhammer 40k? Is that
And
what
Yeah,
then-
it's perfect.
That's perfect.
And then
Yeah,
and then do you want to say, and I'll say I'm Colin, and then you'll say I'm Chuck, and then Chuck
Yeah,
will say
after
I'm
I say
Danny? Is that
Yeah.
what we're doing? Okay.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
Okay.
And then Chuck can be like, "What the hell? No."
No, I'm just going with it.
Okay.
Welcome to Best in Faction.
A competitive Warhammer 40k podcast for competitive Warhammer 40k players. Competitive.
I'm Colin.
I'm Mitch.
And I'm,
I'm
Danny.
Chuck.
Now I'm confused.
We're all confused.
How many Chucks we got on this ship? All right, so
Too many. Always too many.
yeah.
It's
Welcome-
okay. It means we get kind of a Highlander situation. It's going to be great later.
Welcome to the Best in Faction podcast, which of course is well known for its polish and production value. I am so glad that you guys are here. I am also so glad to have not Chuck with us today. Basically, the four of us went to a GT last weekend. How fun is that?
Danny's in our meta now. Woo!
Yeah, Danny moved here, for some reason. That doesn't make...
He wanted to play us.
Well, specifically,
Yeah.
he looked at the Pacific Northwest and said, actually, Idaho is actually what happened.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
also think he
you know,
genuinely thought, what a soft meta. I should move into that.
you know, Washington
It's like
and
Pacific
Oregon.
adjacent.
Washington and Oregon seem to care about COVID. I'd rather live somewhere that doesn't.
Well, the good news is is with my studies, I pretty much have to lock myself away all the time anyway, so I don't get out much.
Deal.
So, we are going to talk through that GT. It is our entire content for today, but before we do that, let's give you an update on a couple things. First of all, the $40,000 that we raised for charity, the 40K from 40K, instead of making a cheap, crappy shirt, which is what I was about to release, I am going to commission actual artwork to commemorate that and make a real shirt of actual quality for you guys to buy. The end result of that is it will take a little bit longer. There's also, just for those that won prizes, there are some prizes for Charity Hammer that have not gone out yet. We're trying to get organized on that to get that out this week. But probably in the next couple weeks, you'll see those shirts for sale. We don't need them to get to $40,000 anymore. We did that on our own. So we're going to use those to just raise some more money and just have a cool commemorative note of the first time and not the last time that we raised $40,000 for 40K from 40K.
Limited edition shirts.
What's that?
Are they going to be numbered? Like this is one of, like we can make them really limited edition.
Oh, well, we could sign them if anybody cared about that.
Oh, I feel like a number is more important.
Not bring the value down.
But,
There was a fantastic moment at the tournament that I just have to share where we all arrive and we're milling about saying hi to people, and Danny's there. And somebody walks up to Danny that we don't know and takes a Ussie with, I believe is what the young people call it. Takes a picture of the two of them, and Chuck says, "That's weird. We're not that kind of 40K famous." Like, people at the tournaments come up to us and ask us if we're from the podcast. But usually it's so that they can belittle us, not so they can take our picture. So, or in the case of two people in our meta, so they can remind me that they don't listen to podcasts.
There you go.
We have two people in our meta that on every time I play them, if I don't even mention the podcast, they regularly mention that they don't listen to podcasts, which I think is such a funny thing. It's like they're like, oh yeah, well, I don't listen to your content. Well, my content's free, so joke's on you. Anyways,
I
sad.
also don't listen to
time.
yours.
It costs time, Colin.
What's that?
It costs time.
It does cost time. But I don't do it for those two people. That's not who we do it for. We mostly do it for the 7 people from the patron group that listen. That's not mostly who this show is for.
Our numbers are up 7. Nice.
Yeah, right. Well, it was 6, but then I blackmailed someone into. Never mind.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so Danny actually was just taking a picture with a friend from Alaska, I presume.
Yeah, who was just randomly there. It was like, oh, okay, cool, too.
Yeah.
So we wanted to take a picture for our group chat on Facebook. Yeah.
It was fun for me as well to meet him because he and I have been debating in a friendly and constructive way things over Facebook for like a year, and I didn't know who he was. I didn't know how I didn't know how he ended up on my Facebook. I didn't know, I saw that he
There's
had
a lot of that goes on at this point.
Yeah, I saw that he had other 40K people in common, and that he normally agreed with me when I posted my political rants. And so I was like, okay, all right, we could be friends. And then I ran into him. Anyways, so here's what we're going to do. We're each going to take a little bit of a moment. Oh, let me think. Is there anything else I should announce? I don't believe so. We're still presuming we'll be at LVO. We're still presuming that we'll get to do our 100th episode live there. Those are both things that are being worked on. I am actively working with Jason Bird on the super major that we want to do. It's not super major, excuse me. Goodly sized major that will be a
Portly
week before.
major.
Portly major, excellent, yes.
Yeah.
With
It's out of port.
with the Biff Pod guys in attendance, it's always going to be a Portly
It's
major.
a Portly major.
Yeah.
Is there like a size requirement to get into the event?
Yeah.
Sweet.
So we're still going to look at doing a big major near the airport a week before Charity Hammer next summer and try to get as many of the listeners as we can to go to that. Try to make a big listener party. So those are the things that are mostly going on. Hobby-wise, I think you're going to find out what all of us are doing relatively easily as we talk about the tournament. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with each of us going through our list that we took to the GT and why we chose that list. I'll go last because I normally do. I think Chuck, who is the most excited. Now, maybe Mitch might be the most excited, but we'll let Chuck go first.
Oh man, and I am completely prepared with my list in front of me because I've done this before.
Okay. Like I said, Mitch will go first.
Okay. I got this.
All right, Mitch.
Pretty sure I can do it from memory.
I think you can too.
Yeah.
What was your list for the
I
GT,
can do it
Mitch?
from memory, Mitch?
Did you take AdMech, Mitch? He asks quizzically.
So my choices were AdMech or Grey Knights of some sort. and I knew that I was going to be doing a lot of like work, and I have a really sore back like for the 3 days coming up before the tournament, just I had a lot to do. So I chose not to play 120 some odd models of AdMech and went with 9 models of Custodes and Grey Knights.
I feel like you made the right choice there. That feels like a miserable experience.
It was, yeah, you know,
like
like
models and.
So there was this moment where I finished a game, and I looked over and I saw Danny, who had finished much earlier than me because he was playing AdMech, but still sorting out all of his squads and models. And I remember doing that at Boise Cup, where you're like, oh man, if I don't do this now, I'm going to be fucked at deployment. So let's just get this done before I go and actually socialize and enjoy myself. There's this like roll call that you have to do managing all of those models. My roll call was much simpler. So what I had was 3 Dread Knights, a Grandmaster Dread Knight, and a Chaplain in my Grey Knights side of things. And then I had 3 Telemon and a Shield Captain on a jet bike for my Custode side of things. So I took 2 Spearheads. There are a million rules that go with all the characters in this list. The main thing is that I'm generating 1 extra CP every turn with my Grey Knights chapter. And then I am able to, pardon me, basically teleport. All of my Dread Knights have swords, both the guns and teleporters, including my Grandmaster. So I'm just shunting stuff forward. So I'm very mobile, and everything in the army. People would ask me like, "Oh, what are the save profiles on those guys?" And I'd be like, "Oh, it's a 2-up, 4-up on everything." And they'd be like, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, everything is a 2-up, 4-up except for that guy. He has a 2-up, 3-up, and that guy he can have a 2-up, 3-up." So even though that I only had 9 models, it takes about 5 to 10 minutes to explain all the rules in this list to your opponents. But the basic idea is, if you're playing in an area where you have lots of terrain, like Jason's, people are going to hide from you if you go first. And if you don't go first, they have to come out and give you things to kill. If they hide from you, you just advance Telemons forward. They run into the center of the board, and they're like, hey, guys, we're not moving. It's not happening. The Telemon had 1 big gun, so that's the one that has 2 Strength 8, AP 4, 3 damage shots, or 6 Strength 7, AP 2, 1 damage shots. And then obviously the missile launcher and the fist with the flamer and everything. So they're 5 attacks each. I did not pay the extra CP to give each of them an extra attack and reroll charges, because that would have made me start with 0 CP. Like, none. As it was, I was starting with 3. And that was the right amount, and I have iterated on this list further, but that's pretty much the list. I don't think that there's if you can go on BCP if you want to see the exact list. It's also been posted in the Biff Pod Discord if you're in there, and if you want to understand more about it, you can always just reach out to me. But we'll get to the result.
Is it a gimmick?
No, it is not just a gimmick.
Is it legitimately good? That's what they want to know.
I have created the new Gatekeeper list.
Okay.
You can take this and go 4-1 at pretty much any tournament once it's dialed in. The new version adds a Dread Knight, so it gets a lot killier. And like with the new version, it's definitely like you can go to any GT and just be like 4-1, I'll be good. As long as like every decision matters with this type of list, which is cool. There's a lot of tactical depth in the sense of every time I move a model, it's one of like very few resources. If I forget a line of sight or anything I'm planning, you can really screw yourself up. But no, it is not just a gimmick. I thought it was going to be. It is not.
That's hilarious. Okay. By the way, Mitch described it as New Knights, and you guys will be able to hear why that is as he gets to his games. Chuck, did you take orcs? Because orcs are so good, the internet tells me.
No. I looked at orcs and I thought, a horde of guys with morale problems. I'm gonna go the other way. I went 1,000 Suns.
You don't have to field 40k players. It's fine.
I brought 1,000 Suns. I knew there was some room to add complication to my list, but I'd had like 3 half practice games, so I wanted to keep it simple. I went with a full cult of duplicity. I bought a Disc Lord, an Exalted Sorcerer on Disc. I gave him Forbidden Lore and Rahati, so he could know and cast 3 powers, and then I gave him the Athenian Scroll, and I gave him Zeech's Firestorm, Gaze of Hate, and Doombolt. This turns this guy into a character assassin. I don't think he assassinated any characters throughout the course of the game, but people gave him respect and kept their characters back and kept them hidden, so it sort of warped what my opponent was able to do in the space they were able to be in. On top of that, I had Ahriman on disc. He had Weaver of Fates, Swelled by the Warp, and Baleful Devolution. He spent most of his time buffing my Terminators. That's actually going to be his full-time job going forward, is he'll get all the buffs and he'll just hang out with the Terminators. I took an Infernal Master. This guy got the +1 strength on my ranged attacks packed, and then he brought Rick Glamours each for buffing the Terminators as well. And then I took a Sorcerer who had Aether Stride and the Prism of Echoes. This gives him a 9-inch move, and it also doubles the range on his buffing powers. So he was able to bounce all over the place and give out Presage and Temporal Surge, which is Warp Time and Prescience, which are the shorter range buffs that are important to be in the right place at the right time. So him being able to go 9 plus D6 for an advance and then be like, okay, now I'm going to give these powers at an even further distance away meant that I had this very versatile place to put all of my buffing powers. All that said, I'll move those buffing powers to Ahriman on disc in the future and be happy with it. From there, I took 2 squads of 5-man rubrics. They had Warp Flame pistols and 4 Warp Flamers each, and then 2 5-man rubrics with Soul Reaper cannons. 10 Scarab Cult Terminators, 2 Soul Reapers, and 2 Hellfire missiles. And they had the Rite of Coalescence so that they could heal to full. Like, if there's any damage to people at the beginning of my command phase, they get healed. And then Glamour of Zeech for themselves again. 2 Volkite Contemptor Dreads without missiles. A 5-man unit of Spawn, 2 1-man units of Spawn, and a Chaos Rhino with an extra Infernal Combi Bolter. That's the whole thing. This just mostly operates as a bastion around the Terminators of threat, and then the Terminators can bounce to different places. And the Volkites were intended to shoot at long-range things. Terrain and actual targets meant they were most of the time a place for my characters to hide, which was also super valuable. It just wasn't what I envisioned when I bought them.
So I want to go back to something real quick here. When you said that there was room for complexity in this list, right? You didn't max out what you were already seeing in potential. That's something I've found to be a really useful tool of, like, when you're getting a new book, you're forming a new concept of simplifying to, like, what is this army? What do I want it to do? And making sure that that's what I'm focusing on and not adding that extra distracting stuff, because often it means that you end up missing core things that needed to make the list run because you just don't have the habits built up yet.
Yeah, in fact, we talked about that quite a bit when you were running your AdMech.
Yes, exactly.
And that was in my mind when I made this choice.
Okay,
cool. I can make this more complicated, but I don't know how to do that correctly yet, so I'm just not going to. I'm going to keep it
exactly like you grab the low hanging fruit, and there's that next level of fruit, and it's like, yeah, I can reach it, but man,
I could also
I don't
tumble.
know that. Yeah, I could also drop everything I've already got. Yeah, exactly. Yep. It's that. No, that was just really interesting, and I think that is I want to hear about as you go through your games, like how that simplification, like your reflection on it. That's really interesting to me. So anyway, sorry.
All right. And of course, all these lists have Ahriman, which amuses the heck out of me, because I believe Ahriman is the most played against Chaos model for me.
He is ever present.
Yeah, he's in every Chaos list forever. And then those guys brought new things that are interesting and fun to play against. Danny and I had a different approach of what we were going to bring. So Danny, what did you bring and why?
All right, so I brought AdMech. I've been working on this AdMech list for a while. I decided to kind of go a different route after Charity Hammer. I was seeing how, like, I had these large blocks of models, and I was having issues with them, like not trading super efficiently. And so I decided to go with kind of a more MSU approach. And so I chose a custom forge world with rad saturated and scarifying weapons, so that I increased all my Vanguard to be strength 4 minus 1 AP, which is a huge buff for a ton of different reasons. Makes them very good at killing pretty much everything except for maybe toughness 8 stuff. Anyway, and Thousand Suns, they're really bad at that too, especially the Terminators. So I played Skitarii Veterans Cohort. I took a battalion and a patrol. So I had one Manipulus with the just with the Technomartyr's Raiment of the Technomartyr. I had a Marshal with Programmed Retreat and Exemplar's Eternity. I had another Marshal with Cantic Thrallnet, which lets me switch Canicles or add another Canicle to a unit. And then I had a Dominus with the Artisan's upgrade. And then I took 8 units of 10 Vanguard with Omnispexes, a unit of 20 Rangers with an Omnispex and Data Tether, a unit of 2 Chickens with Glass Cannons, a unit of 4 Sulphur Hounds, a unit of 5 Sulphur Hounds, a unit of 10 Rust Stalkers with the Tempricordia, and 2 units of 5 Infiltrators. So I have a lot of units. It's a lot of units on the table. Like all of them are pretty deadly. They'll pretty much kill what they shoot at. And I don't need the whole army to like table my opponent's army pretty much. And that was pretty evident throughout the game, except for a couple. So,
all right.
Yeah, it was a good list.
So
Okay.
you and I discussed like my version of this list is only like a little bit different.
Yeah.
I go more into infiltrators, and I don't have the dogs at all. They're very tempting. They are super good, very, very tempting. But I feel like there's just the infantry has so much more power. It's always linear, just good power. But it's a really fascinating set of checks for people because you can have big blobs and small units. And like you have some of everything, right?
Yeah.
And then you're also running the check of if you're running any sort of vehicle heavy list, which contemptors, right? I'm gonna be able to keep you from killing my vehicles, and then I'm gonna pick off your small infantry units because all you're gonna have is filler, and I can max out a secondary on that just by hiding my vehicles because
Right.
I'm not gonna kill you that way anyway. I think that's a really important swing for people to understand because you doubly make things inefficient. You are bringing hordes that their anti-vehicle shooting is wasted on, and you're capitalizing on any infantry they brought to max out a secondary. So you are winning twice in that kind of matchup. It's a really interesting set of list checks in that composition, especially if you're for any army that relies on close combat.
That's a really wonderfully elegant way to describe abusing a completely badly written secondary.
Yeah. It never came up for me, but
Really?
But I support the idea.
Like, Danny only has 2 chickens. I'd imagine he maxed that in every game. Except Mars, which we'll talk
Except
about.
for one, yeah.
No. I want to point out that everybody talked about all the 20-person bricks. And both Hank and Danny, the 2 best AdBank players in our meta, both of those guys are doing the 10-man units with the custom traits to make them better. And having played against that and played against the big bricks, I think it is just better. It's just so much better. You don't... yes, you could split fire on those bigger bricks. And you could say, I'm going to have 8 shoot this way and 12 shoot that way. But that isn't the way the game plays.
Right.
The armies that are going to beat you are going to beat you with MSU or durable things you can't kill. But in the MSU situation, you want to be able to be completely spread out, and you also want to not lose that 20-man brick as easily as you lose the 10. So having seen it played, I think that it's just really sharp and really smart and just really the way it needs to go.
The other part of that is you can do both at once. You can have one block of Rangers and one block of Vanguard that are big blocks. And their job is to use that +1 wound strat or whatever, to do things. Or like there are ways to do. I've seen tons of MSU Vanguard and just 2 blocks of Rangers because then they're getting cover all the time. There's a lot of ways to do it, and but I do agree. I think that everyone was so addicted to hey, I've got 60 dice in my hand, that now. Right. But now we're seeing that was so overkill that we're really transitioning into a much more nuanced meta of AdMech, which I think is really interesting because there's a lot more depth in AdMech if you play them in a nuanced fashion. They have all this linear firepower, but there's also a ton of things that can leave the board, come back, that can advance and charge, that can advance and shoot, that you have all this other stuff that is really a toolbox that I think that we as AdMech players have ignored at first, just because it's like, ooh, leaf blower, right? Like it's easy.
Mm-hmm. And
Well,
like
we didn't have to try
I
before.
honestly, oh sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
I see this a lot when armies get FAQ'd, is they almost get stronger. Because the pre-FAQ thing is such an obvious take that you can't really look into the other things.
Yep.
Right.
And then they take those away, and then people go, oh, okay, well, then I'll start
Technomancer syndrome.
investigating.
Yeah,
Technomancer's a great
we're
example.
literally about to talk about a Drukhari list that only exists because of the nerfs, right?
Yeah.
And like, so to be totally honest, I only stuck in the 20-man unit of Rangers because of painting like issues. Like at the last minute, I was going to bring another 10 Ruststalkers instead, and a unit of 3 Cerberus Raiders, just as more MSU and more combat, which would have been good in a lot of my games. But I mean, the Rangers were fine. They're still good.
All right.
Can I ask
I
about
think
the two chickens?
Yeah.
I know that they're there to allow you to do the broken secondary thing, but you have 2 of them. Do you not take it sometimes, or do you feel like 2
Sometimes.
is enough to ensure it? Like what's going on there?
Sometimes I take that secondary. Sometimes I don't. I don't, like, for instance, in my last game against Custodes, I decided not to take it because he had so few infantry blocks, and I knew that I was going to have to really concentrate on killing some of the big stuff first, in order just not to melt.
So you didn't want to, when it's going to be like forcing your target priority, you kind of steer away from it.
Exactly.
Well, it's also it's when you have a really like an opponent that has that kind of mobility or tricks that you're like, oh, if he wants to spend the CP, he could probably screw me out of this.
Yeah.
The example I think of was for Boise Cup when I played against Ben Cromwell's Necrons, the Destroyer Cult. Because they're so chunky models, I can't count on just absolutely killing stuff every single time. He might hold on with one model. So picking that secondary where I'm counting on killing units every turn isn't necessarily what tends to happen with those chunkier Necron lists is you get a bunch of things weak enough and then they all get wiped out turn 3 because he keeps hiding them. So there's just factors that you got to consider.
Yeah,
that's true. Like I think about that. Like I could put forward Terminators, which aren't going to go well.
Yeah.
And then things like spawns and dreadnoughts and tanks and stuff, and you'd end up short on your objective.
For sure.
Exactly. There's ways that you can really interfere.
Okay.
All right. So my games are not interesting for the most part. So I'm going to take more time here and spend less time at that point of the show, because what I want to talk to you guys about is my kind of journey with Drukhari. So I'm an elf player. That's well known. I'm also a Tyranid player. Those are really the things I get the most excited about. And I bought a lot of Drukhari when I was winning so much with Craftworld, Eldar, and Ynnari back in 8th. But I never really got to take them to a tournament. I took pieces of them with Craftworld when that was the style, when it was the style at the time. So Drukhari came out, and I started playing them, and I kind of hated how powerful they were, and I didn't like that I felt required to take Dark Technomancers. I got really irritated by that, and I played games against Chuck where I think I was more mad at what the Dark Technomancer racks were doing than Chuck was. So I kind of shelved Drukhari and let it sit, but kept talking and kept following and kept learning about them. And before Charity Hammer, I said, Drukhari is still one of the top armies in the game. It might be the top army. I want to take it to tournaments. I want to play this thing. I want to do it. But I want to do it my way. I want to play Colin's Drukhari list, not anybody else's. So I did about 30 practice games over the course of 3 months of Drukhari. I took them to an RTT. I went to a team tournament. I talked to Anthony Vanilla. I talked to Brad Chester. I talked to John Lennon. I talked to Nick Malavati. I talked to Scary. I talked to everybody. I talked to JT McDowell. I talked to everybody that I knew that was getting the reps in. And from that and all of that effort, I built what I believe is the best Drukhari list in the game if your name is Colin and you play in the Pacific Northwest. Why am I not being more specific than that? Because I think terrain in 40K is very, very, very...
influential?
Yeah, influential is a great word for it. And I don't know that my list is the best list everywhere else. I know that, people going to London GT can't hide more than, 2 Raiders. Which changes which changes everything. Okay, so what did I like? Well, there are, in my mind, there are 3 constructs for Drukhari right now. The first construct is you take Cabal of the Blackheart, you take a Cult of the Scry, you take all of these are 3 patrol. It's just the best thing. You take Cabal of the Blackheart patrol, you take a Cult of the Strife patrol, and you take a Dark Technomancer's patrol. And all the Dark Technomancer's patrol is a unit of Rax, maybe Draz, maybe a Homunculus, depending on the list, and 6 Chronos. And then the rest of the list is pretty standard. The other thing that people like are some people like Double Trueborn, which I played at the team tournament and thought was quite great, where you have a Cabal of the Blackheart detachment, a Obsidian Rose detachment, where you can get another Court if you want, another Archon, and another Trueborn unit, and you do Obsidian Rose, so they reroll wounds instead of hits, and they get longer range. They're actually a better Trueborn unit in my experience than the Cabal of the Blackheart, because 24-inch blasters is amazing. I think if you're playing in a meta that's very Dreadnought heavy, very vehicle heavy, I think that the double Trueborn build actually makes a great deal of sense. And then the third one that people play, well, then there's a lot of people playing their own thing. Like, Scari's playing his own thing, Brad Chester's playing his own thing, and those things are pretty different and no one else is playing them. But the third thing is what I started leaning into, which was when I talked to Nick, when I talked to Brad, when I talked to people, everyone said the same thing. I wish I could fit more witches, is what everyone kept saying. And I was like, why does everyone keep saying they wish they could fit more witches, but not just fit more witches? So for a while I played 610s of witches, 60 witches. That is too many, but I did learn what it is that I was looking for. So here's my list, and I'll explain why it's the way that it is. It starts off with a Cabal of the Blackheart patrol. And I did take a court. I took a 7-man court that's 4 Sliss and 3 Urgles. That's for a very specific reason related to the last, which we'll talk about after you guys hear the whole list. I have not traditionally liked the Court of the Archon. I find that I like aggressive pieces early, and they kept dying early. They really want to be around till turn 3 when they can go to a 5-up, 5-up. What I realized, though, is that they're so inexpensive that they are actually a durable witch unit. So instead of 10 witches in my list in a raider, I have these 7 court. It's roughly the same attacks. It's not really. They don't have reroll wounds. They don't kill the same things, but they're phenomenally more durable than that witch unit. And they can hang with the Archon. They can stop him from getting overwatched, which is a really big deal. I think I did that against Danny. No, maybe not Danny. There was someone where I did the Archon charging and eating all the Overwatch, because you can't Overwatch him because he's next to the court. You can do the thing where the court's hiding in a building and 3 inches away from them is an Archon standing on an objective that can never be shot. Like, there's just a bunch of utility from that court, so I added it back in. My Archon has Ancient Evil, which is Fight Last. I know that rerolls is great. Fight Last is a game-winning piece of tech. It was amazing against every opponent I played. It did phenomenal things. You end up in MSU Drukhari, which is basically what I'm playing, you're going to charge in a bunch of different places. You need to have Fight Last. You need to have Fight First. You need to have all that tech so that you don't get interrupted and blasted off the board, because when you're playing even Adback, where everybody's T3, Strength 3 with a couple attacks, your witches can still just get wrecked. Your Incubi can still get all killed. Like, it's a big deal. And then I gave him the Djinn Blade, which means he has 7 attacks at Strength 4, AP 2, 3 damage. That's great. Attacking twice is great. He kills things just fine without having rerolls. Then I have a Trueborn unit. My Trueborn unit has a blast pistol. That's just because on the leader, in addition to the 2 blasters of the Darklance, I had 5 points left. I'll probably leave it, to be honest. I don't value the Splinter Rifle at all. I think that poison is only good in matchups that I'm already going to win. Like, I've had it be good against Morty, and it was good against Be'lakor at the tournament. Like, I have not had it matter. Like, the things that I'm scared about, it's not good against Admech. It's not good against Mitch's BS that he's playing. It's not good against Thousand Suns. Like, the things that are good right now, it's just not good against. It's not good against Sisters. Like, it's just not, poison's just not good there. So, having a blast pistol on is kind of fun. Gets me an extra shot when they get close. Then I have a unit of 5 Cabalite Warriors. Everyone says, why aren't those witches? Because Cabalite Warriors are 10 points cheaper and have a better armor save and better benefit from cover. 5 guys with a 3-up standing on my objective is better than 5 ladies with a 6-up invul. Everybody has a 6-up invul. This is a better armor save for cheaper points. It gets me 10 points that I spent on a blast pistol on the Archon and a blast pistol on the Trueborn. But more importantly, it allowed me to have these 5 guys that every game are standing on my objective. Those Cabalite Warriors, I think, moved once the entire tournament. I'm like, here's my home objective. They might do a banner or something, but they're not doing anything else. I have 2 units of 5 Incubi. That's because those plus Draz is a Raider. I don't value more Incubi than that. I think Incubi are amazing, but I think that because of how limited you are and who can go on a Raider and how ridiculously fragile they are, it's just, you can't have too many of them. Then that also has the 5 Raiders. I think Cabal of the Blackheart Raiders are the only Raiders worth taking. I don't think Redeploy is better. I don't think Obsidian Rose is better. I don't think not taking Cabal of the Blackheart and letting them be Strife is better. I know that they can be whatever you want. What I value is rerolling shots on Dark Lances and rerolling a hit in combat. Like, people don't appreciate, especially will come up in the AdMech game. All of my Raiders were constantly charging Danny, and they did kill meaningful amounts of dudes because they are 3 strength 7 AP1 attacks. Right? They get an extra AP on 6s. Like, they just do things, and Dark Lances that reroll a hit are a really, really big deal, especially in a meta where everybody's playing Dreadnoughts. Okay, the rest of my army is 2 Strife Patrols. It doesn't matter what's in what, so I'll just talk about it all at once. I bring 2 Succubuses. The first Succubus I bring is Triptech, the Whip Lady, with Competitive Edge. 10 attacks, hits on 2s, wounds everything that's not a vehicle on 2s, AP 3, 2 damage. At the end of that, anything that didn't get to the damage step gets to happen over again. There are better, spikier wise, there are better Succubuses that do more damage. She works 100% of the time. I have never charged anything with that. What is she? 65 points? 75 points. I've never charged anything with that 75 point character that did not obliterate its target. I've never not had her obliterate her target, is what I'm trying to say. The other Succubus I took is the Casino Slot Machine Succubus. I do not like her. But I want 2 Succubuses in the list, so I have to think about that. But she is 14 attacks. Every 6 is 2 mortal wounds, and then she's strength 4, AP 1, 2 damage. She's cool, but a lot of the time she doesn't do anything and dies. And maybe that's fine because she's 60 points and people don't take assassination against me. But I don't feel like she was amazing against Danny because she spiked high and that's it. Like, she wasn't particularly good in any other one. By the way, the what's it called? Show Stealer, the 6-inch move, I super value that. I have that on the Whip Lady so that she can survive for multiple combats because, as previously stated, she kills basically anything she charges. So, all right. So those are the Succubuses. I also have 5 Mandrakes. I think that is just mandatory table stakes. All of this stuff that can deploy in the neutral zone of the board and you might go second against is really bad for Drukhari. Invictors are really bad. Infiltrators are really bad.
Infiltrators are the worst.
Yeah, it's all bad. And at the very least, it lets you map out, it lets you block off half the board if you get to deploy that first. And then I often will put like an empty Raider or a 5-man unit of witches on the extreme end of my deployment zone. And now I've got kind of a semicircle of shield from them going first. If I go first, I will regularly YOLO the Mandrakes into something and kill it. Mandrakes do reasonable damage, or I'll move block something, which people have absolutely
That's even
seen.
more value.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Maybe both.
Or you just pick them up.
Yeah.
And let them redeploy on the next turn. Mandrakes are amazing, amazing, amazing. These 2 Strife units also have a unit of 10 Hellions. I was very anti-Hellion for a long time. Hellions are amazing. They are fragile beyond all get out, but there are tons of matchups that are hard for Drukhari where the Hellions basically sit in my deployment zone and then on turn 3 or 4 go out and obliterate a thing that has to die and cripples my opponent. Again, the hardest game of the weekend, I would say the Hellions were a massive key point. We'll talk about that when Danny and I talk about our game. Finally, all that's left is witches. I have 1 unit of Blood Brides. I have 1 unit with a net. I do not take the Agonizer, Morvane's Agonizer anymore, the relic that doesn't let people fall back. I don't take that because I don't have the CP to spend. My CP is too important. I actually like the net better because it does. I think nets add a really good 4 attack damage profile to your witch units. Also, nobody tries to fall back if you have a net in my general experience, so I don't think I need the relic to make it not possible. I'll just trust that the 2/3 of the time that I'll win the roll off with the +1 is enough. Also, people fall back all the time and kill your witches. The idea is just to try to stop them from falling back. So, that's fine. And then my other 10 men also has a net, and then I have 4 5s that have no special weapons. So the 2 10s, at the last minute, like minutes before I locked my list in, I gave both the Hecatrix's power swords for 5 points each. Holy crap, was that amazing. I do flat strength, the strength drug on my witches, on my 10 men's, because you have to be strength 4 in the game if you're a 10 men witch unit. You have to be able to shred Marines, you have to be able to shred Admech, you have to be able to shred Thousand Suns. Even with reroll wounds, you need to be strength 4. It's just more important than anything else. So if that's the case, the power sword makes them strength 5. So you have 4 attacks, often hitting on 2s. Strength 5, AP 3, AP 4 on 6s. Incredible, super good. The power swords was really sharp. I was shocked that I hadn't thought of it before, frankly. I think it was Chuck's idea, actually. We were in the car having lunch, and he's like, "What about power swords? Do they get +1 strength?" They sure do. So
yeah, I'd heard it somewhere. It's good to listen to podcasts.
Yeah, right? Unless you're those 2 people. And then the 4x5 witches all roll drugs randomly, and the Hellions roll drugs randomly as well. Why do the Hellions roll drugs randomly? Because I'm not a scaredy cat. Brad Chester said, real men roll drugs on the Hellions. And so I started doing it, and it's really fun. For one, everything but ballistic skill and leadership is good on the Hellions. That's the first thing. So regularly I'm happy. And like there are games where they get strength and attack, or they get strength and toughness, or they get movement and strength. Like, it's amazing. And then 2 CP to double the drugs in those situations is also incredible. I've had that Hellion unit wipe out a unit of Thousand Suns Terminators in 2 different games, and in both of those games having double drug mattered a lot. The 5 men...
You double the drugs, it doubles both, right?
It does, yes.
You're getting a lot like super value at that point.
Exactly. So if you got for example, if you got attacks and movement and you doubled them both for that turn, they'd have 5 attacks each. The leader would have 6, and they'd be moving at 18. So like, it's a lot. Okay. So the 5 men witches, I rolled for drugs on all of them, and their basic purpose was whatever their drugs were. I assigned them based on that. If they got a 10-inch move, I would often put them behind a wall and get them ready to run on and put a banner or take an objective or advance into cover on a different objective, like get somewhere that they couldn't do first turn if they didn't have a movement of 10. If they got strength and toughness, I would sometimes put them out as a trade piece. If they got crappy things, like if they got ballistic skill and weapon skill, I would use them as a screen or a piece of fodder or something to hold an objective. The reality is that for 50 points, those units are phenomenal. They kill things. They're fast. They take stuff. Are they durable? No. They're 50 points. So the way that this list functions is there are 15 different close combat threats. The Succubuses, the Hellions, all of the Witches, the Court, the Archon, Drazar, who I didn't actually mention in my thing. All of this stuff together is so good at trading that if I start fighting with you, even if I take big losses, I can still brute force you out of being able to play the mission, is the basic idea. And it's so much MSU and so many raiders and so many tricks that that if you are going to kill me faster than I kill you, you simply will not get the opportunity to do that, to play the mission while you're doing it. The final thing I'll talk about, because several people asked me to talk about, is Drazar. Drazar is amazing. He's worth 145 points. Stop saying otherwise, it makes you look dumb. That's the first thing I would say.
Such a boss.
He's so amazing. And I do not take reroll hits and wounds on him. I do not do that, and I believe that it is fundamentally wrong to take it on him. This is a debate I've had a lot. People say, well, he's not reliable otherwise. And I fundamentally disagree. First of all, he hits on 2s. If you're really worried about rerolling those, The Archon does give Incubi reroll 1s. He gives Core, Blackheart, and Incubi, and Drazar's an Incubi. So if you want, I like them to be in a buddy cop movie together. I like Fight Last and Drazar to just go on an adventure together. If you guys don't know this, the Drazar and Incubi Fight Last abilities don't work. That's not a thing. So he goes with the Fight Last relic, and they wreck things, and Drazar rerolls 1s. The wound thing, he is strength 6 with his high damage profile, +1 to wound. And I'm sorry, but that means you're wounding anything in the game on 4s. Lots of the game on 3s. A bunch of the game on 2s. If you're hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and wounding on 2s, I think you're okay. I don't think you need a Warlord trait for that. And that's everything T5 and below, which is often what he's fighting. The reason why you don't take Ancient Evil, is because if you do, you only get 2 other beatstick characters then. Because you only get the 3 Warlord traits. Because I'm not giving Draz a Warlord trait, I effectively have 4 beatstick close combat characters. And I suspect that both Chuck, who I've played a ton, and Danny, who I just played, will both tell you that they wish that I didn't have 4 beatstick close combat characters. Right? Like, Drukhari characters are amazing. So, does that...
I think the big thing is you have that, but also go back to the fact that you have 14 units.
Yeah.
It's the sheer volume of, I'm going to throw 5 at you this turn. I can do it again.
Yeah.
Right?
And maybe even a third time.
Yeah. And that's really Drukhari. Like, yeah, you're killing me really quickly. I have stuff left. So, that's my list. That's why I took it. I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I would not change a hair on anyone's head. I would not change one bit. I think 5 Raiders is too many. It's kind of frustrating. This particular list, I've got the Court and the Archon in a Raider, and they're the ones that would lose their ride, because I have 2 10s of Witches with Succubus in Raiders, Incubi and Draz in Raider, and the Trueborn in a Raider. If I take that Court out of their Raider, I don't like them nearly as much. They can advance and charge turn 1, and so if you put them in a Raider and you put them up on your deployment zone, that's an amazing amount of reach. In a game against Chuck's Thousand Sons, they went across the board and wrapped a Rhino and caused what I would say was actually strategy crippling.
Cost me turns of movement.
Yeah, just wrecked him. Yeah. I've had them run out and take and wrap something on an objective before. So I think I have to have 5 Raiders. 5 Raiders is going to be hard to hide depending on your terrain. So
I think it's possible that you could start the Court in a Raider knowing you're going to missile it out on the first turn and start somebody near that Raider to occupy it when they're done.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Drop a Raider. That puts you open to indirect fire and such. But...
Yeah, one of the things that's been considered heavily with this list is I am starting with 5 5-man units on the table and the Hellions. So the Hellions can actually be deep struck for a CP, and I do that sometimes. But the other thing is I still have 5 other 5s, and I don't want to enable speed freebooters, so that's all stuff that I'm thinking about as well. Final thing I'll talk about is why I only have 7 Court. While I ban this person who wants to sell his followers.
No, wait. What's the price?
Yeah. How many? What's yeah?
It's your their rate.
Yeah. Okay, so I hate the secondaries in 9th edition. I don't like it at all. I think that they've really messed it up. It makes me really unhappy. I don't like that some armies just get a 45. I don't like that some armies can't have anything taken against them. So I can't change that, so I had to build my army to deal with it. There are games where you do not have a 3rd secondary for Drukhari, and it has to be to the last. My to the last are Hellions, Trueborn, and Drazar. Not the Court. I believe that if you make the Court a to the last, that you can't use them in the to the last games. While they are durable, they are 21 to 24 wounds with a 5-up. 5-up, they are not durable enough to go out on an adventure and not have your opponent be like, they're 5 points? Like, you might win that game anyways, fine. But I was convinced there was going to be multiple undefeated people at this tournament, and I was trying to milk it for as many points as I possibly could. So I don't know if that's right. For me, I wanted against Thousand Sons, I wanted to be able to throw the Court in front of them and let them eat a bunch of smites with their 5-up feel no pain. Against AdMech, I wanted to be able to run them into AdMech squads and start shredding them and make AdMech shoot at them. So that's a bunch of stuff in hard matchups where I don't want them to be a to the last. Now, Drazar can be a to the last. He's actually relatively easy to keep alive. He's ridiculously durable, and you just send him out on adventures with other stuff, and he will literally never be the thing that gets fought first, unless you want him to get smited off the table by Thousand Suns, but I wouldn't do that against them. The Hellions being a to the last is fine. I keep them deep struck till turn 3. They come in turn 3. Somewhere safe. Turn 4, they charge something. They kill it. I give them a 4-up invul. My opponent now has 1 or 2 turns to kill them to get 5 points. If they get 5 points but spent their whole turns trying to deal with the Hellions, that's fine too. The Trueborn, I lost no models from the Trueborn unit across the entire game. Across the entire tournament. Trueborn and a Raider, as a Drukhari player, you can just decide which Raiders are important to you, and so you'll just keep one of them safe. The Trueborn Raider is very easy to keep safe. It's very easy to always have it near terrain so that the Trueborn can leap out into cover or into hiding if their Raider blows up. I just think about that all the time. I think taking my Hellions down to 8 Hellions would make them 136, making the court 8 people again to make them 136. I think that's really appealing because then you get to pick whether the Hellions are the court or your third to the last. That's pretty hot. But I think that the main issue I see with that is that 10 Hellions seems really important in certain matchups because they're just like, oh, you brought a giant Terminator block or whatever, and they just kill it.
Yeah, they're your fix. It would be
unwise
to screw with them.
Yeah, so that's my Drukhari list. It did quite well. What we're going to do now is we're going to walk through our games. What I'd like to do is day 1 first, and then how everybody felt at the end of day 1. Reminding everybody that and then we'll do day 2. Reminding everybody that the key here is that we talk about what there is to learn, and we don't get lost in the nuance of things from games that don't matter. So let's go in the order we talked about our lists. Mitch, do you want me to read you your opponent's lists, or how do you want to do that?
No, this is okay. I remember Scooter. So my first game, I played into a Grey Knight's Mirror, which was Scooter, and he was running 3 Dread Knights, 2 regular, 1 Grandmaster, bunch of strike squads, some infiltrator squads that he then combat squatted out, and a librarian that was designed to like do massive mortal wounds and just different things like that. So as far as the game went, it was a new codex for him, so we were, and obviously a new codex for me, so we were kind of working back and forth, making sure we got everything right. And I believe he went first, but so something we didn't mention in the description is my list can redeploy 3 of my Grey Knight models. So I was able to just not be seen, and he went first, kind of move forward, nothing happened. And then I went gated and Gate of Infinity and shunted 2 Dread Knights into his backfield, one of which I had used my litany to make that Dread Knight completely immune to enemy psychic powers. So that was the only time that chaplain was in the list specifically for the Grey Knights Mirror and the Thousand Suns matchup. I only got to play one of those this tournament, unfortunately. I'm gonna practice with Chuck later, but I don't think he's worth it. Grey Knights versus Grey Knights is a lot of denies because you both have +1 to deny, but not +1 to cast. So, and then Chuck and I were talking about it on the drive home. When you're playing against Thousand Suns, it's like everyone's back to normal because they have +1 to cast, you have +1 to deny, and then neither of you have bonuses in the Grey Knight psychic phase. So, anyway, so we were able to, I'm not going to go into the game for a ton of detail, but Dread Knights and Telemons were able to hide when they needed to and then just push forward and shunt. So basically the Telemon just move into the middle of the table, creating forward pressure, and I'm throwing Dread Knights to the sides and behind you. And so there's just pressure from everywhere. He did make a few mistakes that probably made it more of a decisive win in my favor. He forgot, he deep struck his suicide librarian that can do up to I think it's his max is 17 mortal wounds, but on average does around 9 to 10. And he forgot to activate him, and we didn't realize it until we were halfway through the shooting phase, and you can't go back at that point. So that was a big mistake for him. It might have crippled or killed the Dread Knight, depending, but I had a lot of denies around there, so it really would have depended. But nice dude. We had a really, good solid game. It was relaxing in the sense of we were both playing a book that we didn't know, and it was the same book, so we could just look at the codex together and learn. So that was very much the tone of the game the whole way through. Was like, oh, what Dread Knights used to move 10. Oh, they move 9 now. Oh, they have 13 wounds now. All of them do. That's weird. Like lots of little things like that you figure out. He didn't realize that the Grandmasters have no 2 powers and only have 1 cast, because previously they knew 1 and cast 1. So that was something we caught at the beginning of the game we were able to fix. But yeah, just a good solid game. I ended up coming out with a 98, I believe, on that one. And I tabled him in like 3 turns, I think.
Okay. Who was your next opponent?
My next opponent after that, I don't remember his name off the top of my head. And I don't
Leland
have
Rill.
Yes, Leland. I was playing against Ultra Memes.
Yeah, this is very similar to John Lennon's Ultramarine list, only he dropped the suppressors, which Leland's a good guy. This is not me throwing shade. John Lennon and I have a joke that we can tell whether somebody understands the memes list by whether they understand our memes list, John's memes list, by whether or not they drop the suppressors. The suppressors are actually really important. We'll talk about that another day. But he's got the same 6 dreads with the Invictors. He's got the same characters, but instead of the suppressors, he's got a Devastator squad and a drop pod that have 4 multi-meltas. He must be missing something else too to make up for the points that I'm missing that I don't know. But that's what I see here. There's something else, some other point somewhere. I think maybe there's I have a servitor unit in mind too to do actions. He doesn't have that, so that's the rest of the points. Anyways, how to go with Leland?
It was basically I hid, and I was able to hide enough that when I went, I don't remember if I went first or second on this one, but when I was able to move, the thing is it doesn't really matter, because if I don't go first, I just redeploy. You don't see any of my stuff, and then I'm going to shunt and gate 2 things over, and move my Telemons into the center. I don't care what can see the Telemons. That's the whole point of them, right? Is that no one, if you're shooting at them, you're not shooting at the things you need to be shooting at. So I killed 1 Contemptor, got the other one down to 1 or 2 wounds, killed another Dreadnought, and like 2 squads of infantry. For every game, I took grind them down, because that's what this list does. If I'm not killing more units than you brought knights, right? Like that's it. That's the only scenario where I'm not killing more
or
units.
Or you're losing so much it doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly. It's a non-issue. From there, it was like I think 3 turns. And the list, like, so what's really interesting about the list is all of the extra shooting that Colin loves to talk about in the Ultra Memes list does nothing against Telemon once they start closing in range. It's like I have all of these bolter shots and all these different things. It's like, cool, I do not care. Like, I'm going to turn off rerolls if it's going to be anything scary, but otherwise, go for it. And it makes it a very durable. I just out durability him, and I'm better in combat. So I killed the Invictors turn 1. Like it was brutal. Yeah, it's a hard matchup.
My experience with that actually was that the Hellmonts were easy to kill, but his list lacks some of the shooting efficiency, so it's a little hard to say. Like for example, he didn't take Master Artisans as a warlord trait, so he didn't have a reroll to hit on every single thing that shot the whole game. So I don't know. Did he seal of oath one of the Telemons? Is that what he did? Giving him full reroll?
I believe he seal of oath a Dread Knight, and I just put it into Deep Strike, which I would have done with the Telemon too. Doesn't matter. That's the nice thing.
It does matter. The shooting in the Ultra Memes list wrecks can kill your Dreadnoughts easily. It doesn't, yeah. but it's not good against the Telemons. So he has to focus. Well, I didn't watch the game, but in my experience, you have to focus on using your things like Seal of Oath and stuff on the Telemons, because they're the actual hard to kill thing. That's all I'm saying.
So the hard thing for him is, no matter what, to be able to kill any one of my units, he has to expose more of his list than it takes for my list to kill back.
Sure.
And so he can never exchange at an efficient rate, because I can just control the board, because he can never send anything out. He doesn't have the board presence. and then slowly just tighten that net in on him. And by turn 3, I'm charging into everything. I'm killing everything. He just has nowhere. He can't project enough firepower without exposing too much that then I kill back.
Okay. Well, if you're right, and that's actually the matchup with Ultra Memes, that means your list is even more powerful than we think, because Ultra Memes should be the litmus test for whether or not it shoots hard enough. But also,
what I do,
we can also just stream that for people. I have it.
Cast a power on one of the dreadnoughts that gives me +1 damage on all my side weaponry and all of my combat, and so I'm able to consistently kill one dreadnought with my strength 8 AP2 2 damage shooting, which becomes damage 3.
Right.
And then I pour all of my silencer shots into something else, which is, and then you have the Telemon putting out enough to almost pick up a dread on their own each turn as well. And then I'm going to charge into the things you're trying to move block me with, right? Because if you don't move block me, if you don't have things projecting space, then I'm just shunting 9 inches away, and you're and just creating more pressure. Yeah, well, and the other part of it is I use the Dread Knight, the Grandmaster, that can teleport and have a 3-up invo, so I can really control what you get to shoot at on a turn and make it a lot less fun.
All right.
And then having the Dread Knights having the 5-up feel no pain against all the mortals that the Volkites do is also a big deal.
Fair enough. All right, so in your third game you played Nathan Billings, and he had a triple patrol that's very similar to mine. However, he has less witches, more smaller units of Hellions, 2 units of Mandrakes. He's got Shredder Scourges. I think that's about it for the differences. It's similar, for sure. So how'd that game go?
Well, we won't go into this game a lot, just for reasons.
Yeah.
But it was... I'm like, well, I brought this list to just have fun, and I made that clear to my opponent. I'm like, listen, it's the 3rd round. I know we're 2-0, but like, I just want to have fun. Like, I don't care if I lose to Drukari. I've only played against it 3 times, but or 4 times now, whatever it is. And so we went, and the game didn't go as friendly as I'd like or any of that stuff, but I basically put a gambit out because it's Hammer and Anvil. I teleported and shunted 2 Dread Knights to the very back corners of the table, and the gambit is if you can't kill these guys with your shooting alone. You don't have enough. So you have to commit something to combat. That means getting out of your raiders. And if you undercommit, it's just going to kill whatever you committed back, and then I'm going to get an extra turn with them, which is a problem for you. Right, so that was the whole gambit. It worked pretty well. The basic end of this game was I was making several misplays on my secondaries that could have gotten me points, and I ended up losing by 7 points. And it was, but I got him down with my army. He was down to 5 Cavalites total left by turn 5.
All right, so you ended the day 2-1 and feeling great, if I remember correctly. Well, you liked your list a lot.
Oh yeah, I love the list. The list is great.
Yeah. All right, Chuck, your first matchup.
Colby.
What's Colby?
Colby and I play pretty regularly. I think BCP just loves us to have games with each other. So it was awesome. We got to get together. And he has a split army of Sisters of Battle and Dark Angels. And what he's focused on here is grabbing things that have the bodyguard rule and characters that can shoot real good. So he has the Talon Masters, Morven Vol, and Celestine. And he said to himself going to the tournament, I'm going to be fine as long as I don't get paired into some crazy Thousand Sons player who can jump out a ton of mortal wounds. And on the way to the tournament, I was thinking to myself, gosh, I hope I play a Sisters player who tries to put their Celestine out on the center objective. And it's a total mismatch, right? Like his ability is to try to put the characters forward and not have them shot, and I just don't shoot them. I just smite them to death. On top of that, if his bodyguards ever get exposed, I use my directional smite to kill the bodyguards, and then I can use my shooting to kill them. And then the one that really got us was I killed Celestine with smite. She gets back up, but she comes back where she was, so she's no longer within range with the bodyguard because she was using her Gemini. And so then I can shoot her down, right? Like multiple different ways that I counter his list. It was thank you, BCP. You've offered up one free win for me. I'll take 95 points. Thank you.
Oh,
I think
only one
any other
win?
matchup. What's that?
Only one win? Should we talk about your second matchup?
Yeah. So that's basically round one. It was such a mismatch of lists. We hung out and we played and we tried to enjoy it and we talked through each other's stuff, but like we weren't really gonna have a very tough game, which I'm very relatively used to from a game from Colby and I. So
Yeah.
we had fun.
So, in your second round, you played against Paul Winters, who only plays Slanesh. And you said, "Oh, I'm also playing Mono Chaos subfaction."
Yeah, we're playing our hearts.
So it should be a completely fair and balanced game because clearly the Slanesh rules and the Thousand Sun rules are of equal quality, right?
Yeah, they're not. There's a couple of things in this game that I think are really important. First off, this is the only table that I felt the terrain wasn't great, and I didn't get it until we started deploying. Otherwise, I might have suggested that we change it a bit. But it essentially created a channel that the large-based Greater Demons of Slanesh could go down, and they really couldn't go anywhere else. So I put trash in that channel, and they charged into it, and they killed it. The other thing I thought was great is I bounced one of my characters out, and then I cast Twist of Fate, which is the new Death Hex, and added the 6 inches to it. So I was able to go, "Hey, you over there!" Boop. I take away the character Greater Demon of Slanesh's invuln save, and then I bounce back with Temporal Surge to safety, and then I add 6 inches to the range of my guns on my Terminators, and I blast your character to death. That was the first time I was like, "Oh man, I'm starting to understand what's going on here. I have so much crazy flexibility. I can do so many wonderful things. I can't wait till I've played this army 20 more times, and I come into some sort of like higher understanding and start doing just like things my opponents are like, no, you show me. Like, show me in the book where it says you could do that thing. I don't like it."
That's obviously cheating.
It almost felt, it feels like it, right? I checked before I did it. Right? I was like, I checked every piece. I was like, wow, this is going to be amazing, right? The rest of that game was mostly Paul playing a really, really tight game of really good 40k. And several times over, I would just, oops, foiled your plan on accident. The amount of things that he was explaining to me more things than I foiled than I was thinking about in the game that I was playing. And I think that really shows the difference between the older army and the new one. Mm-hmm. Right? My data sheet's definitely carrying me through against a player who was more prepared for a matchup than I was.
All right. So for the third game, they could listen to you in great detail here. But you were also on another podcast. So you played Zach. So for those that don't follow the show as closely, Zach is our teammate, excellent friend of all of ours. Probably in wins, probably the second most accomplished person in our meta over the past several years. If it's not Mitch, it's Colin, Colin, Zach, and Mitch are the three most have won the most things. Zach's an excellent player, going super hard on Thousand Suns, and they got a chance to play each other. And in the interest of time, I don't know how much you want to go into here versus just pointing them at the hour of content that you created about that game.
Yeah, I would definitely recommend people go check out Unbroken. I actually didn't know about the podcast until they invited me, so I grabbed a subscription and listened to it myself, and I'm actually pretty impressed by it. It's quick and simple. They talk about one game you lost in a GT and what you need to do to try to be ready for that game in the future. So I think it's a really good format.
Fun fact, when I was on Unbroken for the Boise Cup with my AdMech list, that was my time playing against the triple Telemon, that inspired the list I'm playing now.
Yeah. Nice.
It is a great podcast.
Definitely say people should go check that out. The core of what happened in Zach and I's game is that we both took to the last. I used one of my to the last characters, I think it was Aramon, to jump up, do the Psychic Ritual in the center of the table, and then Temporal Surgeon back to what I thought was a safe position. Zach has a Sorcerer who moves 15 and advances and charges, and he took a risk. but he moved him 30 inches plus D6, got into position where he could charge into Aramon, cast Death Hex, and forced it through. And he went in there and he murdered him. That gave him points to the last. It also got rid of a ton of my buffs and disrupted my flow. And then his character was not a to the last target. So it was a great change for him, and it took a position where I actually started with the tempo, and he flipped it on me, and I was so sure I was going to have the tempo for the whole game. I was in a very strong defensive plan, and he forced me out of where I was comfortable, and he really used that to win the game. I think it showed, that level of experience. Like, he just has probably 15 practice games on me, right? Like, he's just ahead. I think those first 20 practice games or so with an army are super important. And then Zach is a very, very clever player.
Mm-hmm.
I never write out a game with him. It's always going to be a tough one.
So at the end of day 1, you were 3-0. No, 2-1. Right.
2-0.
But happy.
Yeah. I'm going to say I'm going to put it in right here because I definitely thought about it that night. This is the most engaged and interested I've been in playing an army since Sisters of Battle, when they had their old book and I was playing during quarantine. Mm-hmm. And I think this is better than that. This army feels like a kind of drug that I should probably have some sort of permission to use. I want to play all the time. And it's not like it's powerful and I'm going to win. I want to play it. I want to like move the pieces around. I want to and that's a fantastic place to be.
That's how I feel about Grey Knights right now. I think that it's really great that with the two psychic armies, psychic primary armies in the game, that they seem to have really struck an interesting balance because they play nothing alike, but both seem really good.
Yeah.
So let's move to Danny. Try to keep this show going. Danny played John Smith, who's one of the better Tyranid players in our meta, and he had an all Chronos list that had a Neurothrope, the Swarm Lord, 2 units of 20 Gene Stealers, a unit of 14 Termagants, 2 units of 6 Hive Guard, 5 Guard, 2 units of 5 Hive Guard, 3 Lictors, and 3 Exocrine. So how'd that game go, Danny?
So I ended up getting first turn, but the board was dense enough in terrain where I didn't really do a lot. I ended up engaging a unit of Hive Guard with one of my infiltrator units, but then of course, because I was still kind of sleepy from from driving all day the day before and like not sleeping super great, I ended up not wrapping them, and so they were able to fall back and those guys got obliterated. Anyway, I didn't do much on my first turn, except for move up onto the objectives and things like that. His first turn, he just went YOLO and went all in with all 40 Gene Stealers plus the Gaunts. Like he moved them all super aggressively, and I lost between those and the Exocrine and the Hive Guard shooting. I think I lost 40 or 50 Vanguard on the first turn, which is it's pretty fair. Definitely, I deserve to lose that many. But the counterpunch was I got rid of all the Gene Stealers and the Gaunts, and I started shooting Hive Guard with my Ballistari, which was awesome. Because they kill one as soon as they hit, or as soon as they wound. Like, it's just dead.
How did they see the Hive Guard?
They were hiding in this kind of like this side, or like this little piece of terrain, kind of way back in his deployment zone. And I was able to draw line of sight, like basically around all of this terrain, and then through a woods to get to them. So I was able to blink them off. Anyway, with all of his scoring gone. He couldn't really keep up with me in primary, and so I managed to win the game basically just doing the mission. I don't really think I killed anything else. I think I finished off the Hive Guard and the Swarm Lord eventually. But yeah, that was basically, I was down to like, I don't know, maybe 20 models on my whole list or something like that. So,
okay.
But that worked out.
Well, next up you played Bombard.
I did. I played Matthew Bombard. He was great. Although his first mistake, he didn't know that I get powered up by drinking Modelo, and so he started the game handing me off a Modelo, and that was a bad mistake. So Matthew's playing Sisters.
Yeah, and he's got 3 units, big units of Rets. He's got 3 units of Dominions. He's just got. This looks like MSU plus Celestine to me. Just tons of tons of ladies with guns and 3 rhinos. Not exactly the same, and then a big unit of Zephyrim. No, this isn't 2 units of Repentia. This is a more of an 8th edition Sisters list played with the new book, it looks like to me, rather than the specific thing that John Lennon has been having everybody do.
Right, yeah, there's not as much bodyguard in this list, as opposed to and there's no Morven Ball, which I was pretty surprised by, because I think she feels like a gimme to me in that army. But the thing that Bombard did, I feel like that probably lost him this game, was that he deployed all of his rhinos on one flank, and I was kind of able to box them in a little bit, so he wasn't able to really use them to get he was able to kind of push them out eventually to get not line breaker but engage in all fronts, but only on one of the quarters. Otherwise, I was really able to kind of nuke everything that came into my list. And the last turn, depending on, or the last turn kind of cinched it for him when I was able to nuke a canoness off an objective from the other side of the table. He did end up going first in this game. But I was able to pull it out, so it was 94 to 66.
Okay.
So you only 94, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I usually don't get full points. All right, and third game.
Yeah.
We had another mirror match.
Yeah. This one's unfortunate.
Yeah, I thought so too. I was bummed. I was hoping that I would get to maybe play him in the later round, or maybe just not have to play him at all. That would be fine. Not that Hank wasn't a great guy to play against. Just AdMech versus AdMech seems like it's probably a pretty boring game most of the time.
And you also were on a table that the TO himself thinks needs to be fixed. It was just,
yeah.
It was just not enough terrain, and whoever went first was going to see way too much of the other person's army.
Yep. Yeah. So played Hank's AdMech. Hank has kind of a similar list to me. He's got 60 Vanguard that are the rad saturated / Scarifying weapons, and he's not veteran cohort. And then he also had a Mars detachment of a bunch of different chickens, and he had 2 big units of Cerberus Raiders, 9 of them, and he has more close combat elements than I do. But I did go first. So I killed all of the Cerberus Raiders on the first turn. I killed, I think, 20 Vanguard, and I did some wounds to some of his Rust Stalkers. And then his clapback was pretty good. I think he killed 40 or 50 Vanguard. But then the rest of my army kind of just mopped up everything that wasn't an Iron Strider. He had some characters and I think 1 unit of Vanguard left. But I killed almost all the close combat. I did kill all the close combat. So yeah, it wasn't going to be enough. So we just kind of called it there.
Did you feel like if he'd won the first turn, it would have been sort of the opposite? Or do you think you had a plan where you could?
Yeah, I think he probably would have killed a decent amount of my army. I have more units than he does. Mm-hmm. So I think it might have been less bad for me to go second. But I still think I would have been at a significant disadvantage. Plus, I would have had to deal with 18 Cerberus Raiders that would have been in
right
my face and charging me on the first turn.
Yeah, it's a huge problem for you.
Yeah.
So, which would have been bad. But yeah, that's how my day went. I was 3-0.
Yeah. Setting yourself up for a super fun Sunday.
That's right.
So the first person I played was Lee Steiger. He had an Iron Hands list, and it had 1 Redemptor, and then 3 Contemptors, and also an Arcus, the indirect fire Sakaran, and then a bunch of infantry, and 2 units of 2 multi-melta attack bikes. So this list has problems against Drukhari, and those showed up. Having 1 Redemptor and no way to give it an invul is worthless against Drukhari. I'll just shoot Dark Lances at it and it'll die. Contemptors die really fast too. Honestly, a big part of why the memes list works is the ability to redeploy, the ability to put Invictors where they need to go. Invictors themselves are really good against Drukhari. So this Iron Hands list was missing a lot of what he needed. So what I did is I got first turn. There was some pretty massive ruins on the to the sides off the center, and I used all of my mobility and my pre-measuring before the game to basically move raiders up behind them, knowing that his dreadnoughts wouldn't be able to see me, and if his intercessors could see me, they wouldn't open the raider up. So like it set me up basically on his doorstep. One of them, I went 22. I did the advanced strategy on the raider, and I put a raider full of witches and the blood brides and the succubus like right behind a thing that I knew his multi-melt attack bikes could get to. And my thought was, the multi-melt attack bikes can see this raider. If they kill the raider, everything gets out. 5 intercessors can be here. Those 5 intercessors will shoot me and they'll charge me and I'll lose some witches, but I won't lose the succubus and she'll be 3 inches from his army. He was not able to kill the raider because multi-melt attack bikes are terrible. I just can't stand them. I don't find them reliable at all. I just do not like them. He failed to wound. He did not get a wound through with any of them, with any of those 8 melta shots. So he did put the indirect fire into that vehicle. He shot it with the intercessors. He got that raider down to 1 wound, which does nothing for him. On the next turn, I charged his army with witches and incubi and Drazar and a succubus and he spread out his army to hide from me. So if you're playing a list that doesn't have the nuanced redeploy of Ultramarines, you need to have your castle together to try to protect it against the Drukhari. If you spread out, they're just going to pick you apart. I tabled him that turn and the next turn very easily. He needed to stay together, and he needed to deploy farther up and not so defensively, so that he could see around the ruins when I was trying to approach. It's not obvious, and I talked to him about it later, but sometimes you just have to deploy more aggressively than you think you do. It was really his only shot. Also, you shouldn't take Redemptors in a list that doesn't have invulns, in my opinion. Next up, I played Jason Ryder. Jason had a what models do I own from Chaos that are fun list. He had 2 Decimators, a unit of Bloodletters, a Demon Prince with wings, some Fiends, a Keeper of Secrets, some Demonettes, and what's that thing called? The Greater Brass Scorpion. This list has no chance of even playing the mission against me, let alone tabling me before I table it. So instead, I'll tell you what my my first turn, I went first and did nothing. He ran the Greater Scorpion forward and tried to kill a Raider with it, which he didn't succeed at. All of the Raiders emptied and went into the Greater Scorpion. I charged it with all of the Incubi, Drazar, the Fight Last Archon, who easily makes it fight last, a unit of Witches, just a bunch of stuff. The Hellions went flying past him and charged the Keeper of Secrets. I forgot that she can just make me -1 attack. That was a mistake. So the Hellions got her down to 6. Then I attacked the Greater Scorpion. I killed it. It blew up, and it did 6 mortal wounds to the Keeper of Secrets, which was very helpful. That explosion also nearly killed Draz, killed a bunch of Incubi, killed a bunch of Witches, killed my Archon, killed a whole bunch of stuff, and it still didn't matter. Too many tools to kill him. Easily tabled him in a couple turns. Just not essive. It's just not. You can't play Monster Mash Chaos into me. I'm sorry. Third game was against Harry Geiringer. Harry is a Salamander's diehard player. I played him with Tau at the end of an 8th edition GT. We had a really good game. Harry is smart and fun and a great opponent. Unfortunately for Harry, he brought Terminators primarily, and I have a lot of ways of dealing with Terminators. There was we were hammer and anvil deployment, and there was a giant piece of terrain in the middle of the table that I was able to hide Raiders behind. And that basically meant I could position close combat stuff off of his doorstep with enough movement to charge anything I wanted. I made trades like, yes, you can kill the succubus, but she's killing 5 Terminators. Yes, you can kill these 5 Incubi, but they're taking one of your Dreadnoughts with you. He had Terminators and Dreads. That's what he took. I don't know what Harry does in this matchup. I think that this is a list design issue. I don't know what's actually good for Salamanders other than this stuff. So I wasn't very helpful, sadly, when he asked me what he could have done better. But the end result was 97-33. I wasn't. I don't know what to tell you guys. It's that Salamanders with Terminators and Dreadnoughts is just a really bad thing to go up against a list that's designed to kill both. Okay. So I also actually, entertainingly, I can't even remember what the Hellions did in that game. The Hellions might have just chilled out and waited in that one. Okay, so end of day one, I was at 3-0, feeling pretty good. I had no idea who I was playing in the morning, so that was a little bit stressful. But pretty good day. Let's roll into day two, starting with Mr. Mitch, who played into Harry, the person I just talked about.
Harry, yeah. I played against the Salamanders. I lost this game, but that was just a teething issue with the list. I picked the incorrect secondaries. I picked secondaries that required me to go to him, and he's like, "Oh, cool. I'll just stand here and make sure you can't do one of your secondaries and just go at me." If I pick While We Stand, We Fight, which is the 3 Telemon, and I just say, "Hey, cool. If you ever want to see these guys, you're really gonna have to expose yourself." And I'm just going to sit over here and collect points and pick off whatever I need to make sure you're not getting more than 10 for the primary. I have a really much more straightforward game where I force him to come to me. But as it was, I came to him. That just ended up being a really long technical game that made us have a very short lunch. And I ended up losing by around 10 or 15-ish. I don't remember. It was just... And that was, again, I changed my secondary picks. I don't have to come at him, and it's not a problem. But he played a really strong game. He is a very good player. Clearly knows what he's doing. He swung a fully buffed Salamander Thunderhammer shield squad into a Telemon and still did not kill it. Left it with 2 wounds. That was great. Just with all the buffs. 4 damage, everything. But yeah, so I ended up losing that one by a bit, and that was fine. Like I said, afterwards, I'm like, oh, I see what I did wrong here. It's just a learning game. And then my last game was against
Matthew Riley.
Matt, which he was playing Imperial Guard. He is he's on our team. He is our residential Imperial Guard player. He took up that mantle while I was judging, and he's done a really good job of really pushing and learning as much about Guard as he could. So we set up for this game. I ended up going first, and he really underestimated how mobile my army was. He thought that it would just kind of try and take the middle and go forward and just shoot at him, so he hid pretty conservatively. And I was able to basically kind of flank him everywhere very quickly. Use all of his scout sentinels, which he put out to try and keep me from shunting, closer to him. I just moved forward, and I was like, oh, cool, Telemon love charging scout sentinels. Great, free movement. So there was, no good answer for him. If he puts that stuff out, it keeps my Dread Knights from getting in, but if he does, it means my Telemon end up past the midpoint in the field. So he played the game as well as he could. I ended up, I didn't table him. And he ended up denying me a bunch of assassinate points by making some really clutch plays near the end and just eking out every point. But I did end up winning, I think, 80 something to 40, or I don't remember. It was yeah. But he shut down one of my secondaries by making all of his characters really hard to get to for that last round, and that was a really clutch play I was impressed by. But Guard right now he had 3 mana cores, a tank commander, and he hit all that stuff. He had Old Grudges. The Dread Knight he put Old Grudges on, I just put off the table. And then turn 2, I dropped it. I'm like, cool, shoot at him. Still couldn't kill it. It was just rough. It was rough. They do not have the tools to exist in this meta right now in that way. They can compete with a lot of matchups, and he's got the bodies, and he knows how to move block and a lot of different things, but there are just certain matchups where there's no good answer for them, and that's frustrating.
Speaking of Matt Riley...
That's who you played at the beginning of that day.
Yeah.
You're the reason he was so aggressive with the Scout Sentinels, I hear.
Yes. So the way that he deployed with this, he pushed the Scout Sentinels forward sort of haphazardly, mostly trying to keep them in places where I wasn't going to be able to shoot them very easily. And in doing that, he left a hole where I could teleport my Terminators in to range of his fire base, and I could harass that fire base the entire game. He still used that to his advantage. He's got 10 units of guardsmen. He flung them out to hold objectives, and he messed with my secondaries and pushed like that. I also managed to not get the memo. He told me before the game. I thought about it. The Scions have the strat for deep striking close and stealing your objectives with objective secure. So you have to like actually cover the objective, not just touch it.
So good.
I didn't
So
do it
good.
on turn 2, and I thought, oh wow, I screwed that up. I should be careful. And then didn't do it on turn 3 also.
So
Just maximum losing primary against him.
So real quick, in my game, learned a fun fact. That does nothing when your base is big enough that you still can't be within 5 inches if you just center on an objective with dreadnoughts and.
So you're not able to screw
dreadnoughts.
it up.
Yep. Well, no,
Well,
I
I
am if I'm just towing in, but I have to work really hard to screw it up.
Yeah.
That was unfortunate. Anyway,
I
go
put the
ahead.
work in.
Yeah.
I put the work in to make sure it worked. And this is actually similar to my game with Paul in a way that I feel like Matt played a much stronger game than I did. He was very aware of what he was doing. He was very particular, very careful. I was chasing his to the last and letting his scoring units just run around without, respecting them enough. If I was to play the game over again, I wouldn't chase the to the last targets at all. I'd see if I got them in the end. I would obliterate the scoring units as fast as I possibly could, and then just leave him in a corner shooting at me, and it wouldn't matter. That said, we got to game. I got to the bottom of round 5. And I looked at the scoreboard and I was like, oh, he's about 20 points ahead of me. What I need is a 31-point turn. And you know what I did? I decided I would have a 31-point turn. I killed to the last. I got my 15 primary. I finished out my other secondaries. I finished it all off by teleporting a sorcerer across the board and then launching myself into a Lehman Russ with 2 wounds left on it and stabbing it to death with my freshly 2 damage, my force sword. Like I was just, it was a phenomenal turn, and I only in the end of that managed to get 5 points up on him. Like everything counted on that last turn, and it was so Zeechy, so Thousand Suns. It was I enjoyed it. Matt even told me afterwards, he was like, watching you do that was fascinating. Like there were just tricks upon tricks upon tricks, and it was a lot of fun. But I never needed to put myself in a position where all those things had to work. I could have just played the game stronger and it would have been better. But yeah, you learn. And then my last game was John Smith.
That's the Tyranid list we talked about from Danny's first game, for those that are paying attention.
Yeah. Yep. And I remember Colin and I talking about it. I was like, man, I'm actually really concerned. Hiveguard really have the number on Thousand Suns. They're sort of perfect for taking us out. We deployed. I went first. And I just duplicitied my Terminators across and killed half of each of the Hiveguard squads, and that just wasn't a problem from that point forward. So I focused on. I learned from my last game, and I focused on his scoring units.
Was that a screening issue for him? Could he have screened you out so the Terminators couldn't have done that, and he just didn't?
No, because it's that you get the table quarters.
Okay.
Right?
No, I was just
I think
curious.
if
I was just curious if there was a way if he adjusts for that and accounts for that. Is there any way he keeps one squad safe? And
No,
so he's
based on
able to do it?
measurement, if he lined the entire his entire deployment zone, the edge of it, and then I deep strike in and then go to 30 inches, it's 22 inches deep on the deployment zone, plus that 9 inches is only 31. And the
Okay.
bases are large. I actually, literally, don't think he could have done anything.
Okay,
About it.
I just wanted. It was just. It's an
Yeah.
interesting question, right? So, in a different deployment where he can screen you out, that's maybe a harder matchup for you.
Yeah, I think for
Okay.
certain. And also, he could have tried to put them in places where I couldn't be in a spot and see both.
Sure.
Hiveguard
Which case
Hiveguard also can be deep struck.
Oh, there you go.
Like
So there's your answer. Okay.
the sweep.
Anyway, I was just
this
curious.
this is table quarters, and the problem with table quarters is if the terrain's not good and someone can redeploy, they can get angles on you that are crazy. That's what Chuck's talking about.
And that's what I did, and it pushed the game into a place where I could just casually meander across the board, killing everything in sight and scoring all of my points. It was we both saw it as soon as it happened. We just played it out and tried to have fun with it. So it was good. And that ended my day. Ended my week with a 4-1. Pretty good.
Yeah,
Nice.
pretty darn great. We'll talk about that at the end here. So, Danny, I guess
Stop me with 1,000 cents.
I guess we should talk about run 4 together, huh?
Yeah, we can do that.
So, Danny and I matched up in run 4 on a Dawn of War deployment with 6 objectives, I think. The one where the ones in the deployment are wide and the ones in the middle of the table are closer together. Why don't you talk about the first few turns, Danny, and then I'll talk about the turns after that, because that's kind of how that game went.
Sure. I went first this game, right?
You did, yeah. Because I was really not happy about it. I remember.
So I went first. I managed to get a really good board presence. Colin did good with deployment by putting the mandrakes out and kind of screening me out from infiltrators, like just really dominating the board. So I charged in some infiltrators on the first turn into like one of the flanks to prevent Colin from putting down a banner.
Yep.
And then I set up a banner on one of the middle objectives and then both of my home objectives. I didn't really kill that much. I think I killed the mandrakes and maybe some witches or some cabalites, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was very much that I ended up accomplishing on my first turn.
You took all the objectives. You at the end of your turn, I had one objective and you had 5. You had banners up on 4 of them, and I couldn't put a banner on anything but one. Is the important is the important note of those infiltrators that came in and killed the witches and then touched the raiders and the cabalites stopped me from putting a banner up. And so it's like, okay, I have to deal with them then.
And then so Colin killed the infiltrators back with a succubus jumped out of the transport. The Trueborn came out of another transport, or they didn't come out of the transport. They flew away and shot some stuff. I think I lost a couple of horses from one unit. They made some super improbable 5-up saves, and Colin rolled badly at shooting them with dark lances. The -1 strength from over 12 inches away actually was good against the dark lances against those guys, because I think Colin rolled at least 1-3 to wound, and I'm like, yeah, there it is, paying off for me.
2 to 1, do you mean? Yeah, 2 to 1.
They went from a 2 to 1 to a 3, right? Yeah. So
what I did on that turn is I moved my raiders up some.
Yep.
And this is on my turn, and tried to get angles that would make it so the chicken walkers had to come out if they wanted to go raiders, and made sure that I could do some plinking into him without just losing everything, and didn't kill anything as a result. Like I shot at Danny, I didn't kill him, I cleared off the objective. I didn't kill that much, and then it was your turn too.
You did, Colin. You did kill stuff on my turn 1, right? Because that's when you jumped the Archon out, and the
no, that's turn 2. That's turn 2, I promise.
Okay, all right. Okay. So I moved up a little bit too far in this turn, and with some of my stuff, like my Rust Stalkers, I
think you're right, Danny. I apologize.
Yeah.
So on the far edge, Danny moved up his Rust Stalkers a bit, and I realized that I could, without advancing them, because it was turn 1, I could send the Hellions in, and they could make like a 4-inch charge, and the Archon could make those guys fight last. So that I could get the Archon and the Hellions into them and try to get them completely wiped out. And so the Archon advanced up the board as well. There was a bunch of Skitarii there as well, so I needed the extra Archon support. I went in, and the Hellions picked up all 9 Rust Stalkers and engaged their 4-up invul, so that on Danny's turn 2, he could focus the Hellions and try to get them killed. Was basically my idea is, how much of Danny's turn 2 can I have focused on these Hellions? And then my raiders have it all moved up a bit.
Just a little bit,
yeah. Yeah, just some.
And so my turn 2, I was way too aggressive. Like, I moved up way too far, which we'll talk about in a moment. I think so I moved up pretty significantly to try and put myself back on objectives, killing witch squads, that kind of stuff, whatever was out. And I managed to kill off, I think, 2 or 3 of the 5-man witch squads on this turn. I did pretty good with that. I also managed to kill all but 1 or 2 of the, I think 2 of the Hellions.
Yeah, something like that.
I shot 90 shots into the Hellions, and that combined with lightning fast reflexes made them immune to damage. I don't know. They were really good.
I had a 4-up invul and reminded someone to be hit. They tried their hardest.
And then I did kill the Archon though. That was super important.
Yeah, it
because
was.
he needs to die immediately. Yeah, I think that's basically all I accomplished that turn. And then
You also ran dogs. The dogs that I failed at killing from the middle went to one of my objectives and tied up my stuff, and the dogs from the other side went over and grabbed my other objective, effectively putting pressure on both of my objectives.
Yep.
So this is, I think, where the game pivots, right? So you've got the whole board. You've killed almost all the Hellions. You've killed everything I had out controlling objectives. I've got dogs on both of my objectives. I think I got a 5 from OBSEC reasons, but my banners are... I got 1 point from banners. Like, I'm not doing well on secondary. But what I realize is I moved the Raiders of the Incubi and Draz up just far enough that if they roll decent on advance, they can actually go around the Hellion fight, where the Hellions are fighting people. They can actually go around that combat and get into the Chicken Walkers. And what I realize is, if I send all the Incubi and Draz, somebody will make that charge and kill those Chicken Walkers. And Danny will then... And the Chicken Walkers are super hidden, but they're hidden behind a ruin that I can go through, right? The idea there is Danny then can't get the kill more... I killed more infantry than you killed vehicles thing ever again. And my reasoning was that even if I get tabled in this game, I can outplay him on mission if I stop that. Like, if he doesn't get a 15 from that, then I can play everything else in the game close enough that I'll win 5-10 points. It was my reasoning. Unfortunately for Danny, I rolled well on advances, and Draz and the Incubi did make it to the chickens and kill them. But on that turn, I decided if the Incubi are going already, I should just charge my entire army into Danny. And because of the way that Danny had pushed aggressively and how everything was spread out to take the table, I was able to pick all of the fights. And even with you interrupting in a place that didn't matter, I was able to just brutalize, I think, is really what happened. I cleared off the dogs off the objectives. I had a succubus go into his big unit of infantry. The slot machine got 12 mortals and killed 12 of the 20 dudes, or 10 of the 20 dudes or something.
It was a lot.
Yeah,
I think it was 11. We'll split the difference.
Yeah, and I just started charging into his stuff and killing as much of it as I could, and Danny then responded and did a ton of damage back to me, killing a huge amount of things, but I did what Drukhari do. I still had stuff alive, and I went back into him again, and on turn 4, we figured that he was tabled. Like, we didn't roll all the combats that turn, but it was pretty obvious. So...
That's a really good example of one of the things I think is why MSU combat is so strong.
Yeah.
Is that a bit because you get an interrupt? So if you're just like, I'm MSU combat, even if you just have like 10 good combat units, if you could move up close, not take a big hit, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to charge you with all of these. That means like 9 of them are going to hit. One's going to get interrupted. That's not a big deal. You're going to do a massive amount of damage. Plus, you're going to cause all that movement problems and touching and like. It's very, very strong.
That was a big part of how I ran my list as well, is like I'm either charging one Dread Knight into a unit I need to kill, or everything's charging you because it's turn 3 and I've positioned that way.
Yep.
Right? So that you can really mitigate that. Same thing with even like fights last and stuff. It becomes a lot less meaningful if you can spread it out.
For sure. And like, so like the lesson that I learned from this game, for sure, was that Drukhari are really fast, and my AdMech should kind of like to live in my deployment sometimes, and sometimes it's okay for me just to put like one unit on an objective and not try and push forward with everything so hard, which is really where I lost this for sure.
Yeah, I think if you had stayed in your half of the table and just played the mission, it would have been way harder for me.
Yeah, I agree.
I also think that because you only have 2 chickens that don't want me to see them, all the raiders should have gone at you turn 1.
Okay.
I think that you don't kill them fast enough, and I didn't appreciate that. Like, you need especially if the Hellions went that turn as well. I think you had no ability to deal with the Hellions and all the raiders. And if all the raiders had been closer, I would have made even more charges on turn 2. So regularly, that happened when I played Hank at the RTT, we did as well, where I didn't go and I didn't commit enough with the raiders thinking I needed to be more defensive with them. The reality is that AdBec doesn't kill all your raiders in one turn unless they've built their army to do it. So that was a takeaway for me. But the big thing was, seeing what Danny was trying to do was exactly how I would play AdMech, which is why I was upset that you went first, Danny, because you took the whole table and you took everything and you stopped me from playing the mission. What I didn't appreciate though is that on Dawn of War, which helped you a lot, I think if it had been Hammer, it would have been a lot better for you. On Dawn of War,
I would have been able to concentrate a little bit more.
Yeah, I can just go crazy.
Yeah.
So I managed to take Danny down, sending him into his 5th round matchup against somebody.
Yeah, which is Mitchell Hunter. So funny story, I had played Mitchell Hunter in the last round of the RTT that I went to in Spokane. And where I lost that game too. And I learned at that point that I don't really want to play against Double Telemon with my army, just because it's so hard to kill those guys.
Just such an amateur too. Man,
it's just a casual 2 Telemons.
I learned that in my Boise Cup experience as well. But I'm like, 3 Telemon, this is a problem.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I did a lot better this time. I went first. I pushed out hard. The last time I had forgotten that, hey, you know what? I have a +1 to wound strat. That's pretty cool. I should probably use that this game. So I did, and I took one of the Telemons down to 4 wounds on the first turn with a unit of Rangers and a unit of Vanguard. So that was pretty good. Basically this mission was a fight over the central objective because it had the direct assault secondary. I took also Stranglehold. I did not take Eradication of Flesh this game because I wanted to be able to use my Chicken Walkers effectively and not have to take them out of the game altogether, which was fine because I did good on secondaries.
There's also a scenario where you're not going to kill an infantry unit every game. Right?
Totally.
It's really what you described. It's like, this isn't the time for this.
Yeah, he's got 3 units of Sagittarium Guard, and then 2 units of Scions and a Scion character, and that's all the infantry that he has in this list. Oh, there's Trajan, I guess. Trajan.
So you have to be almost near perfect on your kill.
Yeah. So not worth my time. I tried really hard. I just couldn't quite trade well enough with his army. I should have maybe been again a little bit less aggressive with my list. There was a big piece of line of sight blocking terrain that I could kind of throw waves of Skitarii over this wall and and at my opponent. And I did pick up a lot of stuff. I mean, I managed to kill both Telemons during the game. I killed Trajan. I killed a bunch of other stuff. I felt like if maybe because sometimes you play against Custodes and just they make all their 4+ saves, and that's the game, right? So that sort of happened in this scenario. I also made one really dumb boneheaded move, and that was a 10-point swing. So I think if I would have played a little bit tighter, that in the last round, he managed to advance a Scion squad onto one of my objectives and steal it from me, taking down a banner. Actually, it was more than that. It was probably a 12-point swing. Taking down a banner and also reducing my primary and everything else on the last turn. I probably would have won the game, I feel like. And I lost this game 93-80, so it was a pretty close game.
Very
really
high
great
score.
opponent. Yeah. Really great opponent. Nice guy. I totally should have played better. But all credit to him. He did fantastic with what he had.
I find that in my experience with Custodes is I play them just often enough to not know what they're everything they do.
Mm-hmm.
That's the rate, right? It's not that I don't play them, I don't see them at all, but it's every 3 events maybe, or every there's a certain amount, and every version is different because they can just be I went the Telemon way, or they're oh hey, all my bodies are 3-up invos. Cool.
Yep.
Right? So there's always these. They're always this edge case that you can't account for because you don't know what they're going to bring, and whatever they bring, it just might go oops all 4-ups, right?
Yep.
So that's why I've joined them because I can't beat them. But I I think it's a really interesting thing because I found all of the exact same problems playing against Triple Telemon when I was playing my my AdMech. Like
Yeah.
it was incredibly similar.
So, but yeah, not a matchup that I really want. But you know, I should probably account for that in my list building. But that kind of ends my
Certainly in your
tournament.
meta.
I went, yeah, right, yeah. I need to get better. Need to get good fast.
Don't be
that
bad.
Kind of, yeah, just don't be bad. Be good.
Yeah,
instead.
just be good. Don't be bad.
Yeah. I ended up 3-2, and so yeah.
All right. My final opponent was Zach. We didn't know till the last minute, basically, because if the orc player who had a freebooters list had gotten a few more points, he would have been him instead. But Zach edged him out, and we played. Unfortunately for Zach, I had played 4 practice reps, I believe, into Thousand Suns against Chuck in 2 weekends, and I had played Zach as well. So I knew Thousand Suns incredibly well, and I'm sorry, Thousand Suns. Chuck and I currently, our opinion is, this is bad.
I will illustrate how bad.
Okay.
As I remake my list, everything I am doing is how do I beat Drakari? That is also something that could be useful in the other game. Like I think they are the main predator, and then they're probably one of the strongest lists in the game as well. So like it's definitely going to be the hard road. It's the reason 1,000 Suns are not going to just rocket to the top in a lot of ways. But we'll get there.
The good news is that Thousand Suns can raw power Drakari off the table. That's the good news. Thousand Suns doing really good shooting against Drakari, good mortals, good punch. All of that stuff's reasonably good against Drakari. The problem is that Drakari are much faster, and my particular version of Drakari's ability to just pick every single fight, right, Chuck? Like, we played this so many times, like where I would just be like, I want to fight this unit there, and this unit here, and that unit here, and this unit I'm going to tell the fight last and ignore it. Like,
You have a raider distribution privilege. We get it.
yeah, but it's not just that; it's the Hellions. It's everything.
No, I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah, I know.
Yes, it is a the other part of it is the only mobility that Chuck really can count on, like or Thousand Suns can count on, is deep strike stuff, like teleporting, and you have
Temporal
enough.
surge.
Yeah, you have enough.
But
Well, yes, but you have enough trash to block most of that.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You have
Right.
enough things.
Oh,
that
yeah.
You're like, okay, cool. These aren't relevant in this matchup. Guess where they are? Everywhere you want to be. Sorry.
Yeah, that's true because
that's-
they want to teleport around the table, and I'm not going to tolerate that.
Yeah, and it's very much in this one way. Drukari and Guard are very similar in that we can have a bunch of nonsense that can be like, oh, that goes 20 inches over there, so you can't be there now. Like, and that's all it's going to do, and it cost me 50 points to do it. So have fun, right?
Right.
Like it's that same aspect of that's a huge problem. It's a problem in for Grey Knights that count on that as well.
Exactly. Okay. So, that was my 5th round. Zach and I played on stream. The train was good enough that I could really hide well on my approach to him. He killed a bunch of my stuff. It didn't matter. I got all the points. He couldn't possibly stop me from playing the mission because he just can't. Thousand Suns just can't board control fast enough. And this is the concern that Art of War shared with me, that John Lennon in particular shared with me, is that Thousand Suns can't be as good as we all think they are because, according to him, they lose to everything that's fast. Now, I don't think that's true across all of the meta. Like, Chuck didn't lose to Sisters, right? Like, I don't...
it was Sisters. It was a weird army. I wouldn't call it straight Sisters. I still haven't gotten that game, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's just... I just mean to say that, like, yes, speed is a problem for Thousand Suns, but that just means they need to figure it out. That's all that means to me.
It means we're focused on one solution, which is more likely to see success.
Yep.
So, that wraps up the tournament. Let me tell you guys what the top 8 looked like. I mean, they know, but you guys listening don't know, so... 8th place was Zach. Unfortunately, that the battle point pairing BS that we're all so used to means that if you get to the top table 4-0 and you lose, you're probably dropping to like 8th, which kind of sucks. So JT Steiger with his Ultra Memes got 7th. I believe his only loss was to Drukari. Nick Olson Johnson, who I like to call Naj. I don't know if he likes that, but I think NOJ is neat. He was playing that Freebooters list. He lost in the final round to Space Wolves. Chuck got fifth place, which I'm pretty sure is the highest position Chuck's had in a GT in years. So good job, Chuck. Very happy about that. Mitchell Hunter got with his Custodes, probably because he beat Danny. He got fourth. I think if you had beaten him, you would have done about that, Danny. Steve Trimble had a 18 buggy Blood Axe list that lost when it went second on a table that didn't have enough terrain. So
the rest of the time I got 100 or 97.
Yeah, exactly. And then second place is Forrest Phantom, who played Space Wolves. He's a fantastic player. His list was Dreadnoughts and a little bit of Thunderwolf Cav, and then a lot of the Van Vet equivalent.
Yep. It's cheaper with Space Wolves.
Yep. And then I got first place. And I got first place with scores of 100, 97, 97, 194. So I dropped 12 points over the tournament.
This is pretty impressive.
I felt pretty good about my I'm just going to get as many points as I can. Went really well. So I'm very proud of that. This was a weird tournament win for me. I had not won. I haven't won a lot of tournaments lately because of COVID. I won that GT with Ultra Memes, and then I won the team tournament with the guys, and then I won this. And it's like, normally, when I win a GT, I get a lot of messages from people online, people in person come up to me. This was a weird one because, like, even my carpool guys didn't say anything. Like, Mitch and Chuck didn't say anything. Danny didn't say anything.
I said congrats at the tournament. That's it.
Yeah, it was funny. And the reality is, Drukhari is so powerful that no one was surprised that I was able to win with them. And it made me realize that when everyone's expecting me to win and I win, that's actually not very fun. So if you're someone who likes me playing obscure stuff, you might have gotten exactly what you wanted last weekend. Because as someone my relationship with the community is a big part of why I like 40K. And so if you guys are bored of me winning with Drukhari, then I will probably play something else. It was really wild. Like, no one in the Discord talking about it. Maybe Deathwatch.
It's calling to you.
Maybe.
It's Marine Eldar. It's so.
I also hear there's a thing called Arcarius coming out, and that there are Tyranid rules in it. And beating people with Tyranids is great because it makes you feel like the smartest person in the world. That's actually why Alex's ego is such a problem. Because Alex has beaten so many people with Tyranids that now he just believes his brain is this giant 40K brain that no one can defeat. So
super wrinkled.
He is the hype mind.
It is. That's right. So, and he also won a GT in middle of nowhere Canada with forces over the weekend, which got much more attention than my win, which we laughed about. Anyways, I was really happy.
So I just want to also point out that there was still a Mitchell in fourth, so the trend continues. It's not me, but it seems like that's just where we belong.
That's where we put our Mitchells.
Yeah, just in fourth, just on the edge of being relevant.
Right? So, that's basically what happened. Wonderful tournament. We didn't actually say the name at any point, but it was called Harbor Heresy. This is the third Harbor Heresy, I believe. I think I've been to all of them.
Great event. Jason's always an awesome TO.
I haven't won.
Sure, awesome.
I actually haven't won the Harbor Heresy before, so that was fun for me.
Cool.
Zach won the first one with a record of 4-1, and I'll remember that forever. Because all of the undefeated people wrecked each other on the final day, and Zach ended up winning. Zach lost to me.
Well, that's pretty great.
Zach lost to me in round 3. I lost to Abuse Puppy in round 4, and then Zach beat Abuse Puppy in round 5. And so the end result of that is all 3 of us were 4-1, and Zach had more points. So that was Zach's first GT win, by the way. This tournament had 49 people at it. We tried really hard to get it to a major. That would have been really cool. It was called Harbor Heresy. It was in Hoquiam, Washington. The next tournaments that we'll be going to is there's going to be a GT in Bellingham in November that we're signed up for.
So excited.
Yeah, that's a sleep in my own bed GT. That's
the GGGT, I believe is what it's called.
Yeah, Danny, if you want to go to that and sleep here, that's what Chuck's doing.
Okay, cool.
So we're gonna have a little slumber party at Colin's house, but not play 40K here. It'll be weird. Anyways, that's in November. We're not gonna go to SoCal, any of us. We're not gonna go to the team tournament, any of us. The Vegas teams, it's in next weekend. That's just COVID, Delta, data. We're not going to get into that, but we don't think it's a good idea to travel to that for us personally, so we're not going to. I'm still thinking I want to go to the New Orleans Frontline tournament that's in December. That's on my birthday weekend. I'm hoping COVID will allow it. That'll be my next big event. So, anything any of you guys would like to say before we wrap it up?
Well, I think before we go, we should probably have Danny pitch the things he does.
I was gonna say I wanted to shout out Grim After Dark. I was just on their latest episode, had a great time.
Yeah, you guys should totally check that out. We had Mitch on. We talked about judging and then Mitch a lot, which was awesome.
Called Danny animatronic chuckling gay skeleton. It was great.
True, all of that is accurate and factual.
Yeah.
So you can check us out on Grim After Dark. It's usually on Tuesday nights. We might move nights. I'm not sure yet. Stay tuned for that. We may move to Mondays. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, every Tuesday, 10 p.m. Eastern time, or 9 p.m. 9 p.m. 7 p.m. Pacific time. If you're on the other side, check us out every week. And then also, if you want to check me out on Mob Rules, where we do codex reviews and that kind of stuff, we come out with an episode like once a month. We're recording tonight, in fact. So come check us out.
All right. Anybody?
The other thing I would say is, for anyone who's interested in the list I'm playing right now, the refinement is you lose the chaplain and the captain on a bike. You go to a foot captain and you add a Grandmaster Dread Knight. And so you're at 5 Dread Knights, 3 Telemon. It's and then 1 captain. So I will be playtesting that against Collins, Drukari, and Ultra Memes at some point, and Chuck's Thousand Suns, so we can let you guys know how that performs, because it's something. I don't know what yet. I don't know how good, but it's good.
All right, so we'll be back in a few weeks. I don't think we have anything other than that to plug. So thank you, everybody. If you'd like to support the podcast, you can come talk to all of us all the time in the Biff Pod Discord community. It's a patron group that costs you $5 tight a month. You can find that at patreon.com/BIFPOD. All of the content from Charity Hammer is up on Can Hammer's YouTube, Art of War's YouTube, and Biff Pod's YouTube. There's still 300 hours or something crazy of content for you to go watch. There will be a test later. Ooh, I should do a test. I might do a Charity Hammer trivia game now. Yep. Make sure to like our podcast. Make sure to tell people about us. We are not advertising on Facebook really at all anymore. I've decided not to bother advertising in places like Comp40K and such. So we're relying on you guys to tell people about us. So please do that. And with that, we'll be back in just a few weeks. Talk to y'all later. Bye now.
Bye.